Oh, look, it's this thing. This thing being Cyberverse Battle Call Optimus Prime. I feel like most people watching this probably already know about this figure, but just in case, this is from the Cyberverse line, not the small-scale Cyberverse, but the actual YouTube short cartoon series Cyberverse. It's a figure that is not great looking in truck mode, but also is kind of impressive in its own way. It's another big, silly, gimmicky kids toy. I would say maybe not as fun as Powerful Optimus Prime, which of course we're going to do comparisons with later, but it's a better action figure. Definitely a better action figure. Also, the transformation does at least one interesting thing. But as you can already see from this truck mode, it's pretty compromised. The weapon storage is nice. I like actually how solid this is. Like, you can actually pick the truck up from the weapon storage. I wouldn't advise doing that really, but you can. But then you just have legs sticking out of the back. Granted, you do also have legs on Powerful Optimus Prime, but the legs are hidden just a little bit better because of the way the whole thing transforms. The thighs end up kind of more under the front section a little bit better. Also, this front section is incredibly shallow. I feel like, it should really proportionally come out maybe to about here, but it doesn't. And instead, you just have this kind of narrow pseudo box with obvious robot legs sticking out the back. The cab also from the front doesn't look too much better. It doesn't look terrible if you're only looking at like this portion of it, but up here you've just got straight up exposed ball joints, and the cab it's like flat here, but then it comes in because of how all of this works. It's very strange. Also, mine has some paint issues, and I'm not sure what to do about possibly cleaning that up, just because of, like if I try to clean up this is already painted, so I don't want to strip paint off of it. But yeah, it just kind of came that way. Oh well. But it's, was for what it is. It's fine. It's reasonably well done in terms of like paint applications and stuff like that. We'll look at all this stuff when we get to like the robot mode, but I do like that the wheels are a different color, so they are in black, so that works. It'd be nice if the rims were painted, but whatever. Get a nice tamper-craft Autobot logo. The smokestacks are painted in black this time, but I think that's more for the Cyberverse design. You get a little bit of extra color tampos up top here. I do appreciate that they actually painted in the windshield wipers. That seems like an unnecessary extravagance given the nature of this toy, but that's actually kind of impressive. And for the front, you've got the big gray grille with the black and yellow for the headlight section. And the yellow does pop really nicely in the black. I like the kind of matte finish that they use with the paint here, but it is ultimately kind of sparse for what it is, and you can't really do too much with this mode. You can roll it, and it does roll pretty well. And it does do sounds, but as before, I'm going to be doing the sounds separately because this microphone just isn't going to pick them up. But there is an on-off switch right up here, which is definitely something that the last two lights and sounds toys we looked at on this channel could have used. Like an on-off switch would have just been fantastic. And we did not get that with those, but we do get it here. So it's just a little switch here. You can flip that up, and that turns on the lights and sounds. And the thing that's kind of interesting, but also not great about this guy, is the lights and sounds, as you can see, are reacting to sound itself. There's no button you press to make the sounds happen. You just talk and it goes. And because none of this is being picked up by the microphone, it probably is really weird just watching this flash all the time. But that's what it does. It just, you turn it on and it makes lights and sounds, but only when it hears local sounds.
Hey, Optimus. Hello. Autobots? Now you're just going to do this over and over? Okay, we have to flip the switch then.
Autobots.
Autobots! You gonna do the rollout thing? I swear he says roll out sometimes. Do I have to be loud or will that set off the gimmick? Optimus! Okay, fine.
So it's a little bit like, I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it a successful thing, but it's kind of cute for what it is. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of a compromised truck mode that has a lights and sounds gimmick that's not all that spectacular, but it gets the job done. It is a pretty darn big truck, though. We bring in, oh, there goes Over Prime. If we bring in our color-changing Dinobot and Over Prime and Samus, this, as you can see, is big. It is a large truck, as these toys tend to be. Well, they're not all trucks, but you know what I mean. They all tend to be large, because that is how they do. And we'll bring in Burnout. So there's how it looks next to a modern deluxe, and it is significantly larger than a modern deluxe, because of course it is. Because again, that's how these vehicles, or how these toys are meant to be. And since we talked about him, we of course have to bring him in for a size comparison. Here he is with Power Flip Optimus Prime, who is smaller, but it's also like kind of feels more dense, if that makes any kind of sense. Oh, that's what happened. The this little bit popped out there. Like this, I don't know. This is smaller, but it's hard to say. This feels like it might be slightly heavier. I don't know. I'm not going to weigh them, but that just is kind of how it feels. But of course, this guy, the lights and sounds, you can't turn on and off, and it's all, you push the button to get it going. I kind of wonder if I could get this guy to turn the other guy on. Okay, yeah, so the sounds from this can set off the sounds from Battle Call Optimus Prime. Anyway, here he is with the duck tank. All right, now before we get all bipedal here, if you like this video, editing of the video, blah, 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 got Patreon, Coffee, links to both at the end of the video as well as down in the description. Otherwise, you could always do the typical YouTube thing of like, comment, share, subscribe. And now we transform. So first we're going to unplug the obvious weapons. There's just these two pegs here that peg into the obvious toes. And then this pegs into the back of this suspicious translucent blue panel hanging out on the back here. And this will just sit off to the side for now. Now to do the proper transformation, want to unplug the entire front section of the cab from the basically from the windows down. And that plugs in pretty securely, but will come undone. There we go. There's this big tab here that goes into this spot here, and that is what kind of, it pushes a button that tells this to make the truck mode sounds. So once you move this, now it'll make the Optimus Prime sounds. Okay, now we want to unplug this panel from right here, just taps in there. And now this swings forward and kind of, does the typical Optimus Prime thing. So again, want to untab and swing it forward, bring it up. And let's just finish up with the lower body, which is extremely simple. You just want to take the obvious legs and straighten them out. Bring this panel down so that it can rotate the waist assembly around. And this can, we'll leave it here for now. I'll explain why in a minute, but we'll leave that there. Untab the legs, bring them out, and then you actually need to click the feet to unlock ankle tilts. Because yes, this thing actually has ankle tilts. It's actually pretty decently articulated. As I mentioned, this thing is not a terrible action figure. Now the arms is where the transformation is kind of interesting. So you want to take the fist and fold it out. And with the fist folded out, you take this panel and fold it in, and it comes around and tabs in to make the forearm, which is very cool. I've seen people comment on this before, so it's not new or anything that I'm bringing it up, but I just think that is a really simple but also really clever transformation. And doing this, we'll see it more in a second, but like doing this, you actually can see his telltale Optimus Prime forearm arrows or triangles are there, but it's split between the two panels. So when you bring the panels together, it finishes making that detail, which I just think is pretty cool. Anyway, last thing to do before we're done, mostly, pretty much, is to take this gray panel and fold it back. And then have to get the head out, which is a little tricky because there's no, like, you can kind of get a nail on this little, zoom in here. You can kind of get a nail on this little nub up here, but this spot, which you think would be easier to get a hold of, you can't. And there's really nothing back here you can grab either. So you kind of have to just get a finger in there to get that little section. And it's very, yeah, getting the head out is kind of annoying. It is legitimately kind of annoying. And this is a children's toy, so this is kind of ridiculous. So I'm just going to use a spudger. There we go. And you can see even using a spudger, this thing is kind of annoying to get. I'm just noticing there's a scratch on the head for some reason. Anyway, pull the head up, and that's it. There we have Battle Call Optimus Prime in his robot mode, and he is pretty neat. Definitely proportionally a little bit odd. I think it's not terrible. It kind of, like, I don't necessarily think these proportions match the Cyberverse design, but, you know, the Cyberverse was a bit more cartoony, and so his proportions were a little bit more exaggerated in places. So I think this is okay for that, but the head is a little bit small. But other than that, it's a pretty decent looking Prime. He's got the right Prime bits, the mostly red torso and arms, blue fists, blue shins, blue feet, that kind of thing. But as I mentioned before, they did paint a decent amount for this. So you've got the gray down here, but you also have the shins in black, which is more of a Cyberverse thing. And the sides of the thighs in black as well. Midsection or waist section is black. They're definitely the detailing, like the detailing is there, but it's not painted. Same deal with the arms. The biceps also have like the kind of Cyberverse detailing and stuff. But yeah, you're not getting a ton of additional, like, I mean, yes, okay, this stuff is technically new because robot mode, but it was visible in vehicle mode. So really the only new detailing you're getting here is like the biceps, the midriff section, the waist section, and the head. So not a ton happening here. Also, it looks like his head is tilted to the side for some reason, and I don't know why. Whatever. But yeah, this is an interesting figure that he looks, yeah, he looks fine. This panel here actually can plug into the back, but the problem is it's a little tricky to do because you can't just, I mean, I guess you can slide it up here, but like some of the bits kind of get in the way, and this kind of gets in the way. So what you end up having to do is there are these little hooks, these little like hook tabs right in here. You can see that little red hook tab that the translucent blue piece is on. You kind of want to brace here because you don't want this flipping around, because spoilers for what it does, I guess, but you kind of want to brace up here, lift this up so that you can pull it out a little bit. And then once that's out and able to flop around freely, now you can bring this up, and these gray tabs on the back will plug into these slots on the inside of the faux or the truck mode grill section, and then this big tab will also sit in there. This doesn't push a button, it just gives that a place to go, but you can plug all this in, and that will solidify the back section, and then you can kind of re-hook this up here, and that cleans them up a little bit more so you don't have that panel hanging off. But the problem is when you do that, you've now locked the waist rotation, which, as you saw during the transformation, he does have. So it's kind of a, clean up the back versus lock articulation. It's a little bit rough in the design. But let's just move right along here. So the head looks good, though it's a bit squished. It's, again, the Cyberverse design. I kind of like, though, how they've got more like stylized angles. It's kind of like the best thing I can liken the Cyberverse design to, especially in terms of the head, is it's kind of like animated, it's not like animated, but it's like animated in the sense that it's more stylized but still identifiable. And instead of animated that used like pronounced round shapes and stuff like that, this has more pronounced and, I guess, nuance in a way, angled and like straight line and stuff shapes, which I don't know, it's just an observation. But I also think it's kind of cool how they looks like they painted his eyes in like a slightly, or not his eyes, but the area around his eyes in a slightly darker gray than they used for the mask, which I think is kind of a neat effect. Makes it look like his face is behind the mask is a little slightly like shadowed. And there are now black accents they painted in the sides and the head crest, which is neat and kind of a departure for Optimus Prime. And then, of course, the light blue eyes, which, because they used a darker gray for the section around the eyes, makes the light blue pop really nicely. So it looks good. The only thing that kind of bums me out, other than the lack of paint, because I feel like this guy could definitely do with a little bit more in the arms at least, and like the waist section. The only thing that bums me out color-wise on this guy, besides the paint, is the chest windows are very just kind of clouded looking and not all that interesting. But of course, you can turn on the electronics and you get some lights and sounds that are now for the robot mode. But it's not great because you've got the light kind of in the center and it makes the chest windows glow, but it's not uniform.
Hi.
Megatron.
Yep, that's Megatron. Megatron's... Oh. You're just gonna randomly say names? Is that what we're doing?
Autobots.
Are you just talking? Are you even catching?
Decepticons.
It just doesn't really make the chest glow in a way that I think is worth all of this. Like, or not worth, but like it could have been better. Like maybe if they used two lights, or if they had a way to diffuse the light better, so it kind of spread out a little bit more, and at least wasn't quite so intensely centralized right here. I don't know. But anyway, as you may have clocked, he does have articulation, and it's actually pretty impressive for a figure like this. So you've got left and right movement on the head. You can also, if you want, use the transformation panel to look up and down, but really, I don't think you want to. Shoulders are on ball joints, so you can go all the way around. You can go out only that far, but you can still go out. You can also use the ball joint as a sort of butterfly motion, and you can also use the transformation joint kind of, but it kind of wants to snap back into place. So yeah, you're not going to get too much out of that. You get a bicep rotation, 90 degrees of elbow bend, no fist articulation. If you unlock the waist, you get full waist rotation, but you have to keep the panel out of the way. I'll show that more later. But right now, in this configuration, you cannot use the waist. The hips can go forward to a little bit past 90 and back only that far because the back of the hip is like crashing into the torso, so you're not going to go any further back than that. The hips can also go out to 90. You get a dedicated thigh swivel. And this might surprise you, but he does have knees. they are not fake knees like you get with so many other figures like this. He has legitimate knees and ankle tilts, as we saw, that actually go pretty far. So not too bad. Also, I guess worth pointing out, the insides of the thighs are filled in. So yay for that, for anyone who's bothered by that kind of stuff. So yeah, he is pretty well posable for being a big gimmick toy. It's the kind of thing where, a lot of this is the kind of stuff that Powerflip Optimus Prime does, but he has knees. And like the ankle tilts are great, but I really wish, if nothing else, I wish they could have just given knees to Powerflip Optimus Prime. That's the one thing that I really wish they gave to that toy, but whatever. And for weapons, he has this thing, which is molded pretty nicely, painted pretty nicely in, very specific places. I again really like the matte paint that they used for like the black here. Just something about it is really appealing. And again, we will see more about what this does when we move on from this. But for now, we're just going to put this somewhere. And essentially what you do is you use the big peg here. These small pegs are what pegged into the toes. The big peg can actually peg into the back here. And there are a couple of different ports up here and down here. And I think the lower one is the one you want to use. But again, just brace this and just gently push and wiggle that in. And that will store the accessory and kind of keep it out of the way. And just angle him forward just a little bit. So yeah, for what he is, he looks cool, even though he does have some things that are like, yeah, it could be better. I also, again, wish they had a little bit more paint, but I appreciate how posable this figure is, and he is big. He's big and chunky. Okay, let's get some size comparisons going here to see just how big. So yeah, you can already see he is tall, which is good because he's so lanky, but he is tall. Like, again, roughly twice the height of a Voyager, of a tall Voyager, definitely more than twice the height of a Deluxe. And we get all of these out of here. Come here, you. Bring in Powerflip Optimus Prime. So here he is with, well, Orion Pax. That is how he stacks up there. He is definitely noticeably taller, but as I said in the video for this guy and the video for Bumblebee, when we did the comparisons, I still absolutely adore this thing for how fun it is to mess with, because you've got that Orion Pax to Optimus Prime transformation that is so satisfyingly kinetic and kind of, I don't know, just fun to do. And now he is, there with Optimus Prime, and he is still taller than Optimus Prime. But we can also do the other thing with this guy and extend his legs and do the power flip thing. So he's now armored up, Optimus Prime, and here is where they get to be about the same height. He is now, Powerflip Optimus Prime is now a little bit taller because the head goes higher, but if we were to ignore this, they're practically the same height. To the shoulder, like if you look at just all of like where everything stops, I feel like the knees are at about the same position, the waist is at about the same position. It's maybe a little bit higher on this guy, but yeah, I really wish he had knees. I want knees on this guy. Oh well, it's too densely made for me to. I don't think I can make him have knees. I can't mod him, or at least I'm not confident enough to try it. But anyway, here he is with the duck tank. Okay, and finally, the main gimmick of this figure. Going to unplug this, and we'll deal with that in a minute. Now, there are two ways to set off the final gimmick here. You can either turn on the lights and sounds and make a sound loud enough to set the gimmick off, which I really don't like that, because you have to kind of walk a fine line between making sounds that are loud enough for it to pick up on and make its own lights and sounds, without setting off the main gimmick. And that's just it's a difficult line to walk. I don't like that. I really wish that they had figured out something else, because I've yet to find a way to like reliably set off the lights and sounds without risking the other thing, and I just don't like that particular approach, and I think they could have done that better. But whatever. But you can do that, but also there is this gray button here. So you can push the gray button in order to make the gimmick go off instead, which I like having that option. It kind of makes me wish they kept the lights and sounds on their own as like a sound activated thing and left the power, the upcoming like Energon armor, whatever it's called, gimmick, which you'll see in a second, big surprise that that's what this is, and left that to just the button, but oh well. Anyway, I'm going to push the button and now, once this is flipped around, there's a little bit more you can do. There's actually there's this tab here in the chest that kind of tabs into, it wedges in between these two blue bits on either side of this gray piece. So it kind of, it doesn't lock the torso armor in place, but it does keep it from flopping around. I wish it locked in a little bit more solidly, like if it really clicked rather than just frictioned in place, but whatever. And here we have armored up Battle Call Optimus Prime, and I like how the head completely changes. The armor is neat, though I do think this could benefit from getting some detail paint in there. I know it's supposed to be Energon armor, and that's fine, but I feel like just a little bit, like maybe some light blue or some metallics in here somewhere to just kind of make some of the details on this thing pop, because right now you can't really see them that well. I just think that would have been nice. But here he is, all armored up, and he is cool. And you don't really lose any articulation. Like these bits are kind of in the way of the arms, but they move. So you can kind of fold them up and out of the way to get the arms to go around. So you don't really have to worry about them too much. And now that this isn't restricted by the folded up Energon armor, you can unplug this and kind of bring it down and actually use the waist rotation. Granted, you could use the waist rotation in the unarmored mode as well. It's just easier to use it in the armored mode because this isn't clumped around the back of the robot. And because of how this is on a little armature here, you can actually bring it back without having to like bring it awkwardly down or anything like that. So you can kind of still keep it in relatively the same position while still enjoying the waist swivel. I don't know. I like it. What else? Well, when the lights and sounds gimmick is turned on, you can still see the lights through the Energon armor, which is pretty cool. And now you don't have to worry about this. Yes, I know. Now you don't have to worry about this going off because it's already gone off.
Decepticons? Autobots? Noises. Loud noises. Well, he sure says stuff, doesn't he? Well, I appreciate the fact that his voice clip sound quality changes between modes. Hush. There's a little bit of like an echo to the armored up mode, which I guess it's cool that they differentiate the sound of the voice between modes.
It's yeah, I've still got kind of mixed feelings about this. I think part of the problem is I feel like I would have liked this more. Not to say I don't like it, but I feel like I would have been more impressed with this if I got this before Power Flip Optimus Prime. Because at this point, the only thing in my mind that this has going for it over Power Flip Optimus Prime is the articulation. That's about all it has that entices me anyway. But anyway, we're going to turn that off again and take a look at that armored up at the armored up head, because the armored up head is different, and it kind of reminds me of almost like a stylized Make Toys Armored Up Prime design, like with the single visor and the multi-layered faceplate that's kind of pinching in. I don't know, I think it's cool. I also like how they went with a darker faceplate overall versus the lighter faceplate that they used for the other head. Of course, there's a lot more stylization here, a lot more jaggedy bits, and you still get articulation. It's just left and right. You cannot use the panel for up and down motion like you could with the other head, but I am not bothered at all by that. But yeah, this is cool. One thing I do want to mention, though, my figure, when I got it, I don't know if this is like a common problem with this figure. It might be, because a lot of the eBay listings I saw, this was a problem that I noticed. But basically, if you notice, if I flip this back around and settle all this back into place, I'm going to plug this back in too while I'm at it, just so that this is not in my way, causing an irritation. But if you notice, you may have clocked this little orange piece sitting right here. So what that is when this figure arrived, the armored mode head was just rattling around in the box. And that's because something happened, I don't know what, and it comes in armored mode, like he's boxed in armored mode, but something happened that must have like pushed the, it uses like one of those kind of split mushroom peg clip me do kind of things where it comes out and the little bits that come out are designed to hook over the peg hole that it's going through. Something must have happened that ended up squeezing those in to the point where they weren't, like, it wasn't broken, but the plastic had been warped enough that they just weren't flaring out enough for the head to stay in place. So like when I tried to do the transformation, the head would actually fly off. It would pop off very easily, and it just was not a good time. And you can kind of see under there that this head uses the same thing, but this one is attached more sturdily because those little sections are split apart enough. They haven't been like squished in, which is what happened here. So what I ended up doing was I took some excess, I think this is actually a piece from like a cereal box or something like that, but I basically cut a narrow strip of cardboard, folded it up a bunch, and then stuck the head peg into its usual spot, and then jammed this into that groove between the two halves of the little whatever it's called. And the idea is that because those bits need to go like this to hook in, by jamming something between them, it forces them out a little bit more, which allows them to both hook over that post better, and hopefully, if I leave this in long enough, will basically teach the plastic this is how you're supposed to sit. So I've left it in there for several weeks. I don't know how much longer I'm going to leave it in there for. I kind of feel like you don't really notice it that much, so I'll just leave it in there regardless, but we'll see. But yeah, that was the problem with this guy. And so yeah, now I don't have to worry about it popping out or anything like that. And I think, because before, like, I couldn't do this before. The head would just pop right off. But now it's in there. I'm not going to try like yanking on it or anything like that, but it's good. I can turn it and everything's fine. But yeah, as I said, articulation on this is exactly the same. And then we've got this accessory, which you can finally really take a look at. You can use it in the other robot mode, but I prefer to use it in the armored up mode. And it's a shield. And you just use the big peg to peg it into either of the arms. Either forearm has the peg hole. I prefer this arm, but it's whatever. And now the instructions have you do it this way. I think it actually looks cooler and makes more sense to do it this way, because if you notice, and it's kind of hard not to, there is a sword sticking out here, and it makes more sense to me to have the sword poking this way, because then in theory he could reach over. He could reach over and pull the sword out that way. So I think it both looks better and just makes more sense from if this robot were hypothetically able to move its arms that way, this is how he would extract the sword. But you pull out the sword, and it does clip in place. It's not falling out, but you pull out the sword, and it actually causes these bits to move out. So it expands the shield, which is pretty cool. And you're left with a pretty nicely molded, if basic, sword. I kind of like the little pronged effect at the end. I think that's cool. Some nice molding in here. It's very, nondescript. It's not anything that screams Transformers, let alone Optimus Prime, but it looks good, and it's, nice Energon blue or Allspark blue. And that can go into his hand, and now you've got armored up Prime with a big flared out shield, holding a big sword, and it looks cool. These bits do not lock in this position. I kind of wish they did, but whatever. But you can just push them back in if you want to have the shield closed up. Pull them back out. It is whatever. And if you want to know what it looks like turned around the other way, there you go. And flare it out like that. Again, I feel like it makes the most sense spun around the other way, but this is what the instructions show. And when it's closed up like this, it does kind of make sense because these bits almost look like dual blade things that you could use to punch jab Decepticons with. But yeah, that's Battle Call Optimus Prime. And I do like this figure, but it is not the oh my gosh, amazing thing that I was kind of hoping it would be. Also, I guess just in case anyone's curious, to do a quick look at this. Here is what he looks like when he's using the sword and shield without the armor on. But yeah, I think, as I said, I would have been more impressed by this guy if I got him before I got Power Flip Optimus Prime. He is still cool. He looks cool. Vehicle mode is kind of meh, but he looks cool. The gimmick, for what it is entertaining. The accessories nice. The accessories are nice. But I don't know, there are just aspects to this that I really wish had been done a little bit differently. Anyway, size-wise, he gets a tiny bit of extra height because the head sits a little bit higher and the head is a little bit bigger. So we'll bring our size comparisons back out here. And there he is with all of them. I think we're probably going to see the biggest difference here with Power Flip Optimus Prime, because that's where Power Flip Prime was just a little bit taller. So I feel like now that this guy's a little bit taller, that might be enough to make a difference. We bring them closer together. Here I feel like you can see that Power Flip Prime and Battle Call Prime are about the same height now, just because the head sits a little bit higher. And I also should mention the head on this armored mode is a little bit bigger, so it looks a little bit more proportionally accurate. Not accurate, but it fits more proportionally. It also doesn't have to fit inside of this front chest cavity, so I kind of get that too. But yeah, that's how that looks. And lastly, here he is next to the duck tank. And that will do it for Battle Call Optimus Prime. And as I've said a couple of times now, this is a neat figure, and it does a lot of stuff that I think is cool. I think it might be cool to do a painting project on this guy and get a little bit of more paint in the biceps and forearms, maybe even the hands, detail up this armor a little bit, do some work around the torso and midsection and stuff. I don't know. And the backs and legs are also very hollow, but who cares? Sure, somebody does, but that is just it's not worth caring that much about a child's toy like this. But yeah, I think it'll look cool with a little bit of paint, but again, he just doesn't wow me like I was expecting him to, because this figure has been talked up a lot. I've watched a couple of different videos on this guy, more than a couple of times now in a few cases, and it really had me excited to get my hands on him. I got him for a really good price, less than the $50 that he normally retails for, which is great. I definitely think I'm happy to have this for the roughly $30 that I paid versus if I had paid $50 for him. But I still just am not as impressed with this as I thought I would be. He feels good, if a little bit hollow in the legs, and the touchiness of this and like the whole panel here being a little bit awkward to work with is kind of meh. There's definitely some paint slop in a few places, like what's going on here. This gray bit I'm just noticing here. The scratching on top of the smaller head, which may have been me. I don't know. I may have grabbed a screwdriver at one point to try and pry the thing out. I forget. And also, yeah, pulling out that head is way more difficult than it needs to be, considering this is a child's toy. As I've said many times now, I like this figure, but it is nowhere near as whoa as I was expecting it to be. But I'm talking in circles again, so I'm going to stop. I'm just going to stop here. That has been my look at Cyberverse Battle Call Optimus Prime, which I do want to reiterate I think is a neat figure. Just, I think he's been eclipsed by another one that I already have. But what do you all think of this guy? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you in the next video where we talk about something I haven't decided on yet.